All right, I'm gonna tell y'all a secret when it comes to reading birth charts. It's not about the house system you're using. It's not even about the calculation that you're using, like tropical versus sidereal, because it literally all tells the same story. And reading an astrology chart is much more of an intuitive art than like a logical, which way are we using to calculate this? And so one of the major reasons I use whole sign houses is because it silences my mind more. It sciences the science side of my brain and allows that intuition to come through in a much more clearer and louder way. And again, I've made a video about this before, but this is too where it all comes down to preference. What way is your preference to read a chart? Because that's probably the way that your intuition is going to talk to you the loudest and the clearest. Well, I'll give you guys a perfect example from my own chart of how using both house systems literally says the same shit in a different way. It's just like you're changing the labels of everything, but the story is the same. And this is really what my Become an Astrologer course is all about, is teaching you how to know the basics of everything so that you know enough to silence your mind, the analytical side of your brain, but that you also know how to use your intuition when reading charts, because that's a huge part of it. This is an example from my literal chart, and I don't have a late degree rising, but I have analyzed friends' charts who have a late degree rising, and it's the same. The story of everything is still the same. Anyways, this is my chart in Placidus. It doesn't change a whole lot for me, except my Chiron is in the 11th house versus the 12th house in whole sign. And what else changes? Let's see. My Mercury becomes on the 7th house, 8th house cusp, and my Venus is in the 8th house. So all of those things, what that would indicate to me is that Chiron in the 11th house, I have a lot of wounds around my community, around my friend group, around finding belonging, around being seen and being heard. Venus in the 8th house, I love really intensely and really deeply. And my relationships go through a huge transformation of myself and the people that I date. Also, since Venus is my chart ruler, heavily psychic, Mercury in the 7th house usually indicates to me just right off the bat that I can like pick up other people's energy really well, like their mental space, read their minds kind of. So now let's look at that in the whole sign system. Okay, so Chiron moves to the 12th house, which indicates a lot of wounds around mental health. I used to really struggle with depression and anxiety, extremely bad, among other things that I'm not going to go into. It has been a huge focus of my life to heal my mental health. But what about your wounds around belonging? 8th house, Sun, and Mercury. 8th house Suns and Mercuries, especially because they feel so deeply, and it's tied to their ego that they feel so deeply, and that no one could really penetrate or understand that depth and that intensity that we just innately have. So it creates this sense of it's a conundrum, because we want to be seen for our depth, we want to be seen for what makes us us, but also there's this wanting to hide, right? The 4th, 8th, and 12th houses all kind of have that energy of like wanting to hide what's there. And that can create a sense of not feeling like one belongs. And the whole mind reading thing, that's also a very Mercury in the 8th house trait. The other thing that changes is with whole sign, my Venus is now in the 9th house, but my Venus opposes Pluto out of sign, which can also give Venus in the 8th house vibes. My relationships are a huge point of transformation for me, and it's my chart ruler, so double that. My Venus sign and my Mercury are mutually exclusive, which means each is in the sign of its other ruler. So like Mercury rules Gemini, right? And Venus rules Taurus, and they're flip-flopped. So that puts emphasis on these placements for me. Anyways, that's a short little breakdown and a literal example of how either house system, you can see the same things within them. So use whatever allows you to connect with your intuition and allows for ease of reading. I prefer whole sign. Which do you prefer?